Well, as you can see, I got my camera set up. It's just me shooting right now. We might get the family involved later, but for now it's just me. We'll see. So we have all this 15 acres of woods, which means a ton of poison ivy. I've got some on my leg. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you look at it, but just take my word for it. I get it pretty bad when I do get it, and it was because I was walking around barefoot in there. Don't do that. Don't do that. So today, for this episode, I wanted to talk about the research that we've done for poison ivy. Some of it you probably already know, and some you might not. So number one, what is poison ivy? Poison ivy, Latin name is Rux toxicodendron, and it usually looks like this. Sawtooth edge, usually that one leaf with the two leaves off to the side. That's usually how it looks. Sometimes it can be sort of bushy or trailing along the ground. That's really where it gets you. Other times it will be climbing up a tree, trying to get a lot of light. It'll usually be in places where it can get a lot of light. Sometimes it can choke out trees, sometimes it just runs along the ground. So that's what it is. But why does it exist? Poison ivy always exists in disturbed areas. It's in most of North America, but it is in disturbed areas. Places that do not have a thriving, established plant ecology. These woods weren't very well managed previously. It also shows up around the edges. The edge, general permaculture principle here, the edge is always going to have the most disturbance and the widest variety of life. As one ecosystem, this grass area bleeds into the forest system. That creates an edge where two life cycles, lifestyles meet, and that is where poison ivy does really well. Part of what poison ivy does is, because it creates a lot of leaves, it provides shelter for the ground. Its roots stay there for years. You can even bury it in 2 feet. You can don't burn it. Don't burn it. It can survive burning, but mainly because the oils get up into your nostrils, and that is a really, really bad idea. So don't ever, ever, ever burn poison ivy. But the main thing, poison ivy, its ecological niche, if you will. It has quite a few of them. Like I said, the roots last forever, which means it prevents erosion and degradation of the soil. It creates a lot of leaves every year, and they die in the late winter, which means all of that is now ground cover, which preserves the water in the soil and helps other plant seedlings get started. It produces berries in the winter. Not many forest plants produce berries as late in the winter as poison ivy does. So things like cedar waxwings will eat the berries. Many native and migratory birds will eat the berries, so it's a good source of food for birds that are about to go into hibernation or migratory. Also, as far as we know, the only animals that are actually allergic to poison ivy are humans, some primates, and guinea pigs. Don't know why guinea pigs, but that's what they say. So deer eat the leaves, raccoons eat the berries, birds eat the berries. It's just us who bear the brunt of all the seeds that they spread around. So poison ivy does have a role. It does absolutely have a part to play. But like I mentioned in the episode with the hornets and the multiflora rose, some things have a place for a long time and some things have a place for a short time. Poison ivy has its place to preserve the forest edge from erosion and from leaching of nutrients, and it also serves as a way to keep out large invasives like people who don't care what they're doing and come and just want to just tear up everything. Poison ivy comes along, keeps that out of the disturbed area so it can recover. However, we have no intent of destroying this. We intend to recreate it, to rebuild it. So poison ivy no longer has its place, so we will remove it and plant in its place better things that will help to rebuild that area of the woods, which is what the poison ivy was supposed to do in the first place. Guard it until someone can come along and fix it. So that's why poison ivy exists, at least my theory on it. Obviously, before the fall, poison ivy would not have created these nasty blisters and itches on us, but who knows, it might not be that old. Plants have an amazing ability to adapt, and I would suspect that poison ivy did not develop until well after humanity wrecked creation. Number 3, what does poison ivy actually do to the human body? So apparently, it is not poison, technically. It creates an oil called urushiol, which most human beings have an allergic reaction to. The reason we have an allergic reaction, it is an immune response. Urushiol binds to the skin cells and severs their connection with your nervous system. So your body views your own skin as a foreign contaminant, so tries to fight against it. That's why if you are allergic to poison ivy, what will happen is it'll set up as a blister and then a rash sort of thing. It'll ooze. You'll have that yellow fluid coming out. That yellow fluid is not urushiol. By the time your body responds, the urushiol has already done its job. You can't spread it. What spreads, however, is it can take up to 4 days from contact to when your body actually decides to respond to it. So if you get some on your hands and then scratch your other hand and then scratch your leg and then brush your hair back and then pick your teeth, over the course of 4 days, you've got it all over. Some people say it can even spread on clothes or dog's fur. So if you don't touch yourself, but you brush your leg, and then the pants go into the laundry, and who knows. However, good news is it's an oil. So water does a really good job of getting rid of it. Most of the sources that I found online and most of our experience shows that cold water and a soap that isn't oil based, so a Fells Naphtha soap bar or a lot of dish soaps, as I understand, are not oil based. So if you are out in the woods and you think you've gotten poison ivy, we just do it whether we get in contact with poison ivy or not, because you never know. Just scrub down really well with cold water. And the reason you want cold water is hot water makes your pores of your skin open up to let out excess heat. And of course that means that there's a larger hole for the oil to get in. Cold water makes the pores of your skin contract, which makes it more difficult for the oil to get in while you're washing it off. We recently bought a couple bars of a poison ivy soap, which uses lard and lye, so it's a really old soap recipe, about the original soap recipe, with some extract of jewelweed, which looks like this. Jewelweed is often found growing next to poison ivy. Jewelweed has compounds that can negate the effects of urushiol. It neutralizes the oil, so we'll see if it works or not. We haven't tested it yet. Some research that I've done says no, it doesn't work. Works for some people, doesn't work. At least it's a non-oil based soap, although one has lard in it. So, number 4, how do we handle the plant? So I've gotten it on my leg. I've gone through about 2 weeks of dealing with it, and it's all scabbed over, so it's done. Now what do we do when we actually find the plant? How are we going to supplant that? Well, there are a few ways to do it. One way is to cover it with brush and mulch, which is probably what we're going to do, because we absolutely are not going to spray poison on this. There's no way to guarantee that the poison is not going to go into the ground or going to go onto another plant. We're not doing that. So you pile brush or leaves or I don't know, maybe compost, I'm not sure, but hay or straw on top of it, and then you plant around it. and anytime it comes up, you just pile more on top of it. It takes a long time, but there are several plants that will choke it out if you plant a lot around it and maybe even trim it down. In some places, we'll just leave it alone. For example, this is a path that we intend to use to go in there, but we don't need to go in there or in there or in there. We have paths that we use, that we've looked at it, we've set it up, we've made a little inroad there. We don't need to rid the woods of poison ivy. We just need to make sure that it is not where we are going to be regularly using it. Plus, most plants are deterred by constant human foot traffic as well. I'm not sure what property it is that humans have. Maybe it's just because we have big feet. I mean, if you consider the largest animal in here is going to be a deer, and their feet are like that big as compared to that's a rather large human foot, isn't it? Anyway, big as your head. It's like one of those massive burritos or something. Maybe that's, it doesn't matter. You know what poison ivy looks like. You know what the symptoms are. You know where to find it, why it exists. What do you do once you have the symptoms? Well, what we did was, first, don't scratch. Don't scratch. That was a mistake I made. I actually got it on both feet, but I didn't scratch my left leg, and I did scratch my right leg. Now, it's kind of additionally my fault. I kind of knew this was coming because I decided to do an experiment. I thought, hey, what happens if I don't scratch the left leg? So I didn't scratch it. I didn't touch it. And it was fine. There were a couple of blisters, and it was gone in a couple days. I scratched my right leg. Not like, ooh, I'm going to make pus ooze or scratch it till it's red or whatever. It's just, yeah, I'll just let myself itch it. 2 weeks later, it's now scabbing over. So that is why you don't scratch poison ivy. So don't scratch poison ivy. That's the first thing. Usually that'll make it better. I don't have any tips on making the itch go away. I usually don't get itchy with poison ivy. My skin reacts really badly to it. It gets oozy and big old blisters and red and raw. Yuck. But it doesn't get itchy, so I don't really have any information for that. However, to help the body's response, I would rub it with apple cider vinegar multiple times a day. Not like rub it, but just get some in the palm of your hand or trickle some on it and just kind of gently move it around. Vinegar, specifically raw apple cider vinegar, has an astringent quality. It it helps the tissues to contract. It helps skin to tighten up. Some anti-wrinkle serums, cosmetic anti-wrinkle serums, will have vinegar or a similar ingredient in it to do something similar, but that also helps with blisters. It will help the body to tone back its reaction of, we're under attack, make these big old blisters, nasty, oozy, raw things. It's a helicopter, probably from the army base, several miles in the distance. I also use plantain. Remember I talked about plantain? Let me see if I can find any here. I don't see any plantain, but I showed it in the previous episode. It also has astringent qualities because of the tannins in it. So I would wrap that around, like I got it on a toe. So wrap it around. If this is the toe, you take the leaf, bruise the leaf, wrap it around, and secure it with a rubber band or tape or Band-Aid. Why did I forget the word Band-Aid? I don't know, but I did. So those are a couple ways to help the symptoms. The main thing being to speed the recovery process and to prevent infection, because you really do not want infection on top of poison ivy. So, you know how to treat the symptoms, but how about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? There's a lot of green growing stuff in there. I might not always see poison ivy even though I know that it's there. So what do I do to avoid getting any of it on me? Long sleeves, long pants, long socks, and closed-toed shoes, preferably boots. I have big old rubber boots that are nice because they're also almost knee-high, so that works as well. That way you are covered. Watch where you put your hands, and don't go rooting around in the dirt like a pig, and you shouldn't be getting it on your hands and face. Don't touch your face. Poison ivy in your eyes is horrible by all accounts, so don't do that. When you come in, wash up with cold soap, cold water, and plenty of soap, and you should be good. So that's it. But to recap, that was a lot of information. Recap. Number one, what does poison ivy look like? It usually looks like this. There are some exceptions, but they're very rare. Number two, why does it exist? It's good food for animals in the winter, and it protects the edges, and it protects disturbed areas. Number four, how do you avoid getting it? Stay covered. Boots, socks, long pants, long sleeves. Don't touch your face. Watch where you put your hands. When you get home, wash with cold water and soap. Number five, if you do have the symptoms, do not scratch. And then, if you have the blisters, wipe them down gently with apple cider vinegar. Take some echinacea tincture to prevent infection. Wrap any smaller blisters in plantain leaves. Oh, and number six. I didn't do number six, so you get a bonus point. Is it edible? No. Some cultures, some areas have claimed to eat the very young leaves or the very young berries, but there is no study on that. I'm not going to say that it isn't true, but I'm also not going to risk that. So for now, if someone was to ask me, is poison ivy edible? I would say, don't do it. So that's it. Now you know about poison ivy, and as that old G.I. Joe cartoon always said, knowing is half the battle.